Hi, I'm Gail Gleason. I'm on the protest committee of Collin County Democrats. I like Progress Texas because it gives a voice to everyone that's not in the billionaire media.
It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. We've talked about the blatant power grab happening in Tarrant County with the forced redrawing of precinct maps outside of a census year by Republicans on that county's commissioner's court unsatisfied with their 3-2 majority. By their own admission, they won a 4-1 advantage, and they've resorted to obviously race-based tactics to accomplish that goal. We've also talked about how Tarrant is just a test run, that the same could happen on a much broader scale at a moment when Republicans in dominant positions across the country see the tide turning against them. Well, that broader plan is certainly underway, y'all. Owen Dahlkamp at the Texas Tribune writes that a meeting of most of the Texas Republican congressional delegation was held last night at the U.S. Capitol in D.C. for the purpose of discussing a similar plan to redraw Texas's congressional district map. Again, not in a census year when new demographic data would warrant such a project. This is simply to entrench Republican power. The idea comes from Trump as a tactic to undercut what Republicans rightly fear is going to be a massive defeat for them in the 2026 midterm elections. Republicans, including Dan Crenshaw, Beth Van Dyne, Michael McCall, and Chip Roy, kept their trap shut on the way out of this meeting, but Pete Sessions offered up that it remains to be seen if Governor Abbott would call a special legislative session for the purpose of thumbing the scale for Republicans across Texas, whose advantage one might think is already as gerrymandered as it can be. The difference here, as in Tarrant County, is that today's courts are more likely to tolerate maps that are blatantly designed to minimize non-white voters than yesterday's courts were. Definitely one to follow. Another sign of waning electoral fortunes for Republicans, ever more civic uprising, initially inspired by egregious ICE raids in Latino communities, but now further spurred by Donald Trump's moves to crack down on those demonstrations. Both Dallas and Austin saw significant protest activity last night. Starting in Dallas, where several local immigration advocacy groups, including El Movimiento, Vecinos Unidos, and the Brown Berets, hosted a rally at the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. Organizers agreed the goal was to show proactive support both for immigrants being targeted by ICE and their fellow demonstrators in other cities who are more and more being seen as law enforcement targets themselves. Unfortunately, what started as a peaceful protest escalated into a street takeover, and as destructive behavior began to develop, police declared the assembly unlawful and executed several arrests. CBS reporter Marvin Hurst described the situation as going from chance to chaotic as individuals led others to higher degrees of disruption. Videos linked in the show notes. And a similar scene in Austin last night as a largely peaceful march downtown failed to conclude smoothly. The march, organized by the Party for Socialism and Liberation's Austin branch, started at the Capitol and proceeded to the J.J. Pickle Federal Building before circling back to the Capitol, where organizers declared the event over at about 8 p.m., but more than 100 protesters continued marching back towards the federal building and were blocked from it by law enforcement, who eventually fired tear gas canisters into the crowd. Aiden Runnels at the Texas Tribune says the Austin Police Department and Texas Department of Public Safety officers at times surrounded the protesters as they moved back through downtown. The Trib was unable to confirm if anyone was injured by tear gas, but Charlie Finnerty at the Austin American-Statesman provides a bit more clarity, saying Statesman reporters did see several arrests and that Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis has told them that APD did not use pepper spray or tear gas last night, but that those tactics had been deployed by Texas DPS officers. Video and photos from the Statesman are also linked in our show notes this morning. Houston and San Antonio have also had protest activity early this week, both cities that have seen an enormously chicken shit move on ICE's part, the detaining of immigrants on their way out of court proceedings. John Wayne Ferguson at the Houston Chronicle says plainclothes immigration agents arrested 3 people at a Southwest Houston immigration court yesterday, sweeping in to make arrests moments after government lawyers had dropped the men's pending asylum cases. This has been happening across the country and is certainly central to the outrage that more and more Americans are feeling over ICE overreach and cruelty. If it continues, look for all this unrest to continue as well, with huge protests planned for Saturday across the country. We again remind everyone showing up to make their voices heard to keep it clean. Law enforcement is looking for excuses to crack down. Safety first, keep it legal, don't follow provocateurs into bad situations. A total blast and a packed house last night at the People's Last Stand in Mockingbird Station in Dallas for our 15th anniversary celebration. One last time, a great big thanks to the folks that made our 15 Years of Progress fundraiser such a huge success. Board members Howard Cleon and Louis Bedford IV, double thanks to you guys for being part of the program. Charles Zeller, Pamela Pearson, Alex Andrade, Scott Elphinstone, the law offices of Domingo A. Garcia, PC, Carol Taylor, Chuck Cruz, Amy Forehand, Eric Johnson and Dr. Mark Parker, John Mazzaro, Seeker Strategies, the Honorable Jean Wu, the Honorable Ana Maria Rodriguez Ramos, the Honorable Nathan Johnson, Bright Blue Inc., James Fletcher, the National Coalition for Voting Rights, Matthew Bell, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Texas, and last but certainly not least, the Collin County Democratic Party, who showed up in force last night. And as I mentioned to them, when good things happen for progressives in Collin County, we consider it a thumb in Ken Paxton's eye. And they get a lot of credit for that thumb. They are, in fact, putting together a protest at Republican State Senator Angela Paxton's office later this month, and there's a link on that to learn more in the show notes. Thanks to all of y'all and to everybody who came out last night for all you do and for your meaningful and indispensable partnership. Really fun and inspiring hang last night, and we can't wait to do it again. Stay tuned. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the conservative disinformation machine, but they far outmatch us in funding. Oil and tech billionaires and religious right-wing activist groups spend a lot of money keeping their audiences in the dark. If you've come to appreciate the light that we shine on important political news in Texas on a daily, ongoing basis, please know that our regular, everyday listeners form a key component of our funding, and if that's you, we could use your support as a monthly contributor, and no amount is too small. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. Thanks to Linda Melanson, Glenda Rogers, and Shannon Walton, all of whom are on the team. We appreciate all of y'all very much. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.